We are recording.
We are back. We are back for
Not
birthday.
Your Ordinary.
We're back. Whose birthday?
We are birthday.
We're
It
birthday.
was my birthday.
And Nick's birthday.
Not anymore.
Actually, but did you know that our first YouTube video was actually recorded on Nick's birthday?
That's true.
That's true. My
His birthday.
15th birthday. I
Now,
think.
is that the first time you recorded it?
That
Or
was-
the second time?
That was the third.
Or the third
I
time?
think it was the third time,
I think
actually.
it was the third time
Yeah.
because the hex bug was in it. A little subjectively lore, we messed up the recording not once, but twice before
Three
we
times.
recorded. But the
Yeah,
third
the
time
third
was
time
our...
worked.
Oh, that time it worked.
Alright, well this recording is scrapped too. Bye guys.
What's our anniversary video about?
So, guys, we are back for our first year anniversary, first birthday of Subjectively. We can't believe we made it this far. We want to thank all of you guys so much for your support. It really means a lot when we see your comments, and especially with this video when we got all the submissions for your character designs and hearing the way you guys talk about how we've inspired you and influenced you. That feels really good. So thank you guys so much for supporting our channel. A lot of people would say that 3,000 plus subscribers is not that much, but for us, it feels really
a lot.
great. Yeah. Thank you so much. For those of you who have been with us all the way from the beginning, thank you guys for sticking with us through some questionable videos.
Do you guys want another office characters in the Pokemon style?
I was honestly thinking Yu-Gi-Oh characters in the Rankin Bass style.
Let's do Warrior Cats again.
That video did.
I honestly, this might be unpopular. I think the most abstract video we did was where me, Jack, and Jane went through every Overwatch skin.
Give it an 8.
I like that skin.
I mean, 10.
Oh my, I forgot about that one.
I liked that.
That was like
I
a-
would do that
it was-
again.
That was like a 3-hour recording.
Yeah.
The greatest thing about that video is that we just do that. We would just do that. We would just go through every Overwatch skin and be like,
Or
I
every
like
lead
that
Yeah,
one.
just like on the
character.
couch.
Yeah, and that's actually why we wanted to do this channel originally, because that was something that Nick and I did a lot. We would just go to like the Pokedex website and we just go through every Pokemon and be like, I like this one, I don't like this one. Here's why. This one's kind of underrated. This one sucks.
Yeah.
And we were like, we might as well just record this stuff and make it into videos. And wouldn't you know it, people enjoyed listening to it. So thank you guys again so much. It means a lot. And as a kind of a little thank you, we have opened up the floor for you guys to submit your artwork, your character designs, and for us to give you our opinions and critiques on what you guys are creating, because really that is, for me at least, the most important thing about this channel, is that we're inspiring other artists to create and continue to think about their work and develop it. And it's really cool to see that and actually see what you guys are making, and we want to be able to help you with our informed opinions. That was actually crazy. I put up the video last week, and I figured we'd probably get like 5 or 10 different submissions, but we got like so many different submissions for this video. It's just amazing. I knew we had like 3,000 subscribers, but I didn't think we had this many invested fans. And unfortunately, we couldn't go through all of your characters. We couldn't even go through half of all of the characters that you submitted. So we each only picked one for each of us to critique. If your character wasn't picked for this video, don't worry, because we will be doing more videos like this now that we know that we have this many artists who are willing to submit their work for critique. We definitely want to do this more.
We got a lot of good submissions. We're trying in general to avoid, for the purposes of this video, fan characters in a pre-existing universe. We mostly want to look at your original ideas, and we also got a couple that we felt were just really solid and didn't really need critique.
A couple of the characters we received, we didn't have any changes we wanted to do to them. So some of them we didn't pick just because we liked them the way they were and they didn't really need any work. So we each picked characters that interested us personally, either in the subject or because we related to the main themes of the characters personally. It reminded us of stuff that we would draw, or topics that we were interested in. And we're gonna give some feedback now based off of your character's designs.
Whoa. This is a cool inking brush you used. That actually reminds me of something. It's one of my
what?
favorite things to do other than when I'm designing characters and playing video games with my friends on the floor. It's playing trading card games and PC games. You can get playmats, you can get mouse pads, and you can get sick gamer merch from Inked Gaming.
Yeah, check out Inked Gaming. You can upload your own characters if you want. Make a mouse pad or playmat with your own characters. You can do whatever you want. And while you're there, don't forget to use the code Subjectively10 for 10% off your entire order.
All right, so I'll start. So I picked submitted to us from EJ. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. It was actually a creature design, and it's called the Hornjaw. And I really appreciated that there was so many different sketches for this character. We have this one that's to scale with a human. We have kind of a turnaround, and more of like an anatomical kind of drawing that has like the patterns and some notes about different aspects of the anatomy. We have this kind of drawing that I would assume is like the male and the female, and then we have this kind of more artsy rendition.
We have a lot of information to work with.
Yeah, I picked this mostly because, I mean, I really love creature design, but this specifically reminds me of something that I would have drawn when I was younger, and honestly that I would still draw today, especially in my sketchbook, where I would have like a whole idea of like an ecosystem where the thing would exist, and behavior and diet and all of these different things. And I like that. I like that level of immersion when designing a character, to really get into thinking about, if you're designing a creature, what would the biology of the creature be? And I think that this person thought of that when they were designing it. You can tell that there's some reference with anatomy, specific animals, prehistoric animals, but also living animals. It looks like there's like some mud skipper influence with the dorsal fins. And then the body is kind of like more mammalian, almost like a wolf. There's definitely some reference used, but some of the things that I would change about this, or at least that I would advise that the artist change about this, is actually to use more reference. So a lot of the times when you are designing a character like this and you're in kind of a community of like-minded artists who are also designing characters like this, it tends to be that you end up referencing other artists' work as opposed to maybe what those artists used as reference in the beginning. So if you're designing a character like this, that's a creature that, you're thinking a lot about anatomy, you're thinking a lot about science, how this would interact in a real world setting, obviously you want as much reference as possible because you want this thing to be as believable as possible. So that means referencing not just photos of animals, but, skeletal structures, muscular systems, and not just copying them, but using what you know about these different parts of an animal to kind of create something new. So when I look at this, and I look at the description that the person gave me, pack animals, they have, this tusk on their chin to stab prey. It seems like they're mostly inspired by the anatomy of a wolf, these fast hunters that work together. But they also have these fins and stuff, so it makes me think that, maybe there's some more, aquatic element that you want to involve in this. And so maybe not, instead of just having a wolf anatomy, maybe bring in some anatomies from other animals, aquatic animals, amphibious animals, prehistoric animals too.
I think a really good exercise anytime you're doing this kind of bestial monster design is just experiment. Like, it doesn't have to be the final design, but maybe just take 2 or 3 animals and try to combine them. Figure out how to take this real life anatomy and then change it or combine it in a way that's interesting and unique.
No character design exists in a vacuum, and I think it's super important to think about where this creature lives, how it exists in that space, and that would show through how you would design it.
Yeah, this palette almost makes it feel like it's more from a desert or some sort of like rocky canyon environment. Fins always make me think of water.
This definitely feels more like a fish fin. And I mean, you don't have to limit yourself to what is plausible. However, it does seem like that's the direction you want to go with. The more biologically accurate and, zoologically, like thinking about it the way if this existed in the real world. So maybe think about what kind of adaptations that would, provide for this animal. If they're a fast-running animal, would having these fins on their heads help? Is it just for communication? But yeah, just think about that a little bit more so you have a clearer understanding. And, spend a little bit more time, sketching just animals. I know it's fun to create your own, and compared to drawing something like this, maybe drawing a wolf doesn't seem as exciting. I get that. But it's totally worth it because you'll discover things as you draw that will help influence and inform your drawings later on when you come back to design something like this.
You can really do whatever you want when you're designing any kind of fantasy creature or fantasy character, but it needs to be informed. That's the bottom line.
I'm going to recommend an artist for you to look at. You can follow him on Instagram. We'll throw up the actual name. His name is Jamin Kim, and he does a lot of very anatomical fictional creatures, but he also gives them a lot of personality. But you'll also see that in addition to all of the crazy creatures he draws, he will do, studies of like crocodiles and jaguars and all this stuff, and then he'll draw a griffin. So definitely check that out. The last thing I wanted to say is just think a little bit more about texture. I noticed here in this drawing, you did kind of do like an overlay, kind of seems like a preset texture, maybe it was a brush. And it gives me a little bit of idea of what this thing's texture might be. Again, it feels more aquatic, but think about texture. Don't omit that from a character, especially if you want it to be very realistic. And again, that's something that you have to reference too, because nothing is harder than drawing scales on a lizard, because it's not all one uniform texture. The scales are all different shapes and sizes. They serve different purposes. On the head, they're spiky. On the back, they're platy. On the arms, they're very, very tiny because they have to bend and stuff. So these are all things to reference further. And then it'll just give your creature a more concrete feeling, because when you look at a drawing like this, obviously there's a lot of thought put into the concept of it, but the final rendering leaves a lot to be desired.
That's also not to say you have to draw every single scale. You definitely don't have to do that.
No, not at all.
But just finding ways to render it or give the impression of variety and texture can go a long way with describing more information for your character.
I'll just end with saying that I really do like this design. Again, it really reminds me of something that I drew when I was younger in high school, and it really makes me want to draw creatures again like this, because I love getting immersed in that world building that you can kind of have through natural history. Really, it's what it feels like. It's kind of like this natural, like field notes kind of drawing. I really like that. So keep this kind of stuff up. Be sure to keep sharing us your artwork too, because I'd love to see how you improve over time. Okay. Who wants to go next?
I will. So the one that I wanted to talk about was by Luke. So we went through this earlier, and it's the main character in a fighting game that they're developing, and that really piqued my interest because it's like a really large-scale project. It's a very ambitious project. Undertaking the design of something you want to be a playable game is a huge undertaking, and it's really cool to see the start of someone trying to do that. So the character's name is Aikmo, and he's a needle man. He is a needle, essentially. And he is a needle guy, and the fighting game is called Fight Phobia, and it's about playing as all these different playable phobias, which sounds really cool. I would love to see the other characters too, and I think this is a really cool start.
Yeah, definitely. It's a way to make fighting games feel fresh, so it's not just a bunch of buff people punching each other.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, it's a really good idea right now.
Yeah. They said that the character is the Ryu of the game, which I'm taking to be main character. So cool. The thing I liked about this character right off the bat was we were looking at it before we knew what the character was, and that was a very interesting way to look at it. Because the thing that I really did like about it when I was first looking at was the sort of attempt at this stylization that I thought was really cool, especially with the hands, which are supposed to be like blades. But kind of what ended up happening was Needle wasn't really coming through. It felt more like this amphibious shark person when we zoomed in on the face. It kind of felt like a stylized shark mouth. Mm-hmm. And then I thought the needle on the top of their head was a dorsal fin. Mm-hmm. And down towards the middle, I think there's a pattern on their shirt that looks a lot like water. And then obviously the gray color and the blue and all that coming together just felt like a shark. You want your intention to be readable immediately. So I would say the first thing we got to focus on is looking at a needle and what makes a needle. Whether you're looking at a sewing needle, a syringe, or stuff like that. Because I think I'm starting to see some of the things that we're going for. And the things I do like, I like the simplification of it. I like that your character isn't ripped and is wearing a tank top.
It's definitely far away from Street Fighter as you can get.
Yeah, which is so interesting that you were inspired by Street Fighter. And it's just really cool to see that. So my first thing right off the bat is we got to get Needle to come across. So the thing about needles are that they're thin and spindly. And your character is definitely kind of spindly, but they're very flat. And that's just why it comes off more like a blade. The first thing you can look at is that character's hands, which it feels like you want to be one of the focal points of the character. So think of things like a character with really long nails, or maybe something like Freddy Krueger's hands.
Yeah,
like stuff like that.
Essentially.
Yeah, like feels more like a blade than a needle. Needles are long and pointy and not like flat and sharp.
I think maybe one way you can convey the thinness and pointiness of needles without making it so broad, you could just add more joints, because having this like one point for the legs where it's just one triangle, of course it's going to be wider at the top and thinner at the base, which is why it looks like scissors or blades right now. So if you just have more like joints and thinness, you could do a couple things with that. One, you can have more interesting poses, and also because it's a fighting game, that lends itself to more interesting moves and animations.
Yeah. I think part of, especially since we're talking about the fear of needles, I don't like needles myself. I kind of have a fear of needles. I think part of what's scary about them is this kind of deadly precision. So I think something that might illustrate more that kind of, like, I can go right for the point that'll kill you in one shot. So I think that's why we're saying something like fingers, because it gives this impression that you can get right to the point where you need to be. Like, he has the ability now with these fingers, deadly precision. And I think having something like more joints could emphasize how he's able to now hone in and use his attacks to get this kind of precision, as opposed to these blades, which imply more of like a slashing.
I like that you were looking at a needle and thinking about like what makes a needle look like a needle. You have some motifs in there, but I think you can use those symbols in a better way. So like on the forearms, you have the measurements, and that's a really cool design, and I think you could put that in there.
Oh, I see, like on the tube
also,
of a syringe.
Yeah, it's the measuring marks.
The fluid inside his shirt too.
Oh,
yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
like, okay.
and that's the deadly thing.
Okay.
You know, that's the medicine.
That's the injection, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you could also make that maybe just red, because we're looking at the blue color scheme.
Oh,
this
that's
person,
true. He has 3 color schemes.
This person provided us with a couple different color schemes, and they're pretty monochromatic, which is fine, but if you had a pop of red or maybe a neon green, that would be a little more sinister for whatever the fluid in the syringe is. It could be blood, it could be some kind of poison, whatever you want.
So that's a way to get towards needle. A way to get away from shark is to, I would say, maybe even get rid of the hair and remove the point from the head.
Yeah, I think you need to come up with a more clear concept of what this thing's body is going to be made up of. Try to come up with something a little bit clearer than just a person with needles for hands or needles for legs. I was thinking, this is my first idea, but something like, not really necessarily a scarecrow, but something more animatronic, that has kind of more like sewn together bits and pieces.
You know what I've been thinking of this whole time? The opening sequence from Coraline.
Yeah.
With Other Mother's needle hands.
Look at
creating.
that. Definitely look at that.
Ooh,
If you've never seen Coraline before, definitely look at Coraline, because there's a lot of needles. Not syringe needles, which I think is more what you're going for, but sewing needles. Definitely look at that.
Yeah, I think it is really cool overall, and I think you have a really interesting idea. I think that the thing you have to think about is, do you want this to be a human or not? Like, I think that's something you need to consider now, because if this is your base character, you have to build the whole roster of characters around this idea. So that's just something to think about. Like, if you really do like the way they have these scissor legs and that's how you want them to move in the game, like, go for it. Like, you just have to fully commit to that, because that'd be like unlike anything we've seen in a fighting game before. Maybe they're not humans, maybe they're creatures, maybe they're more inanimate, maybe they're more animatronics, like Jack was saying. That's something you have to sort of figure out. It's kind of like stuck between two things. It kind of felt like there was this needle going on and you weren't sure if you wanted them to just be a human because they have the hair and the face. Just think about if you want that or if you even need that.
I would say even look at some UPA, just in terms of craft. I think the style you have with the flatness is very interesting. It's also fresh for a fighting game.
Very graphic.
And yeah, I think for a character that's the main character that's super pointy, I think that graphic art style could be really cool, very fresh. And also, I think there's a lot of potential for creepiness with old illustrations.
Yeah.
So if you have this phobia-based fighting game, maybe that could be something you could draw from.
Yeah, I think that's what drew us all to this character initially, was how well the silhouettes makes him stand out. I think it's a very dramatic posing. I think that against, this green square in the background, the black, it's very graphic, stands out a lot, and I don't want you to lose that. If you look at a game like Skullgirls, that's kind of what sets it apart and makes it, iconic within the fighting game genre. It's got the 2D animation, and it's set in this kind of 20s style, like Roaring 20s. film setting, and they kind of design their characters around that theme. So yeah, think about that kind of stuff.
Last thing I would say is think about what medium you want the game to be in. Because you want the concept art to inform the style and the style to inform the concept art. And so, like, think if you want it to be pixel art, or if you want it to be digitally 2D animated, or if you want to do 3D animation, the character is going to feel drastically different in those three mediums. Right. So that's something to consider at the time. But, like, keep going with your game. Totally send in updates. That'd be so cool. And link the fight phobias. I know you said there was, like, a hashtag or something, because I want to keep following that because it's really cool. And yeah, good luck with your game. I hope you figure stuff out.
Yeah, great job.
Looks great.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this submission we got from Runaway Arsenic. We don't have your name. I hope that's okay. It's an unnamed character that appears to be the shadowy figure in a crow or raven costume. It seems to be kind of fantasy inspired, almost a little tribal. And it's pretty cute, honestly. Kind of walking the line between cute and dangerous and mysterious. I could see it really easily in like a mobile game or an indie game or something like the Banner Saga, something very stylized. The main problem I see with this is that the silhouette, it's not super interesting. I think there's a lot of potential having this giant bird head to be more like a headdress and kind of be tribal and maybe give information about the character's background. There's definitely a lot of potential with adornments in here to be very intentional with the markings on it and the shapes that are going to define this. You can kind of create this whole culture if you decide on these motifs and symbols that are going to be consistent not just within this character but in the character's hometown or backstory, and you can definitely incorporate that more in their clothing as well. Right now it seems pretty simple. You have some triangles, which is fine, but you can tell a story in the apparel of your character. You can have these recurring motifs that belong in a world that you've created. I would also exaggerate certain features more, going back to the silhouette. Also in the posing with wings and a cape, there's a lot of potential for interesting posing. You can say maybe, can this character fly? Can they glide? What are their combat abilities? If
that's relevant.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of information, so I'm going over just what I get visually. And ideally, when you're designing a character like this, you want to be able to tell the viewer, even without a description, as much information as you possibly can. That's the goal when you're designing a character.
I've been looking at this. I just remembered that in the description, it said there is a face under there. It's just covered in shadow.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest
I didn't realize that
yeah.
until I remembered that. So
right.
it's important that you can look at something and understand it quickly.
I think all of us looked at this and assumed that the headdress, or what is the headdress, was the head, and that was like some sort of bird character. We don't really have any information about what's underneath that. And if that's something you want with the character, if you want the identity of the character to stay ambiguous, that's fine too. But maybe just try to clear it up, maybe like 2 dot eyes down here. And that way it would look at first, oh, it's got a bird head. And then you realize, oh, wait, are those 2 eyes underneath there? And then you're like, oh, there's something underneath. Maybe it isn't, maybe it isn't. And then that kind of gives that convention of ambiguity without being too confusing that we can't really understand what's going on. Depending on what your intention is with this character, I would say including, different poses where the arms are spread out. I'm not sure how much of this is clothing. I'm not sure how much of it is supposed to be part of the actual character's anatomy. I don't know if those are supposed to be wings or big sleeves. And if that's supposed to kind of dance a line between being one or the other, that's fine, but it still needs to be clear. That's going to be important in an audience understanding what it is that they're looking at here, because it sets the tone for the rest of the world. Is this a kind of a world where there are bird people walking around, or is this a kind of a world where people wear bird heads on their heads and then, outfits to kind of make them look like birds? So, that all plays into it, and it depends on what your world is.
The way the hood looks right now, I'm inclined to believe that the hood has a personality and that it talks.
Yeah.
And that it's like
I can see that.
The sassy companion to our mysterious hero.
Yeah, I get
and
that.
I think what makes me think that the most is that the eye in particular is very soulful.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion in that fake eye, if it is fake.
That's also where the most contrast in the picture is.
Yeah, especially right at that beak, which that stark white. It draws you right to that eye. You know, that could be another thing to think about too. If you don't want that to be what we're reading from the hood, then maybe close that eye or make it a less saturated blue so we get the impression that it's either taxidermied or, you know, carving or a part of a headdress or something like that. But I have to say, though, I do really enjoy this character. I would say even maybe that's another way you can distinguish that face without it being too clear what exactly is underneath the hood, is maybe adding another color. I do kind of like how monochromatic it is, but if it helps distinguish something, maybe that's something you can use to separate it without having to add too many other features, maybe just adding another color.
Yeah, experiment.
I think that the line between ambiguity and confusion is kind of being straddled with this piece, and I think that's sort of what's stumping everyone, because it's well drawn, and it's just kind of like things are very dark and mysterious, but even if that is your character's personality, maybe necessarily the art doesn't have to be exactly like that. You can't really tell what's going on with the arms or even really what's going on with the legs, so I think you just have to think about where you want to draw your audience's eye. And I agree with Claire. I think that maybe just making the pose a little bit more clear, because it's very interesting in the back half of the piece, but the front is kind of a straight line for a long part of it. Even just something simple like extending a knee out or having another arm out and up and having more negative space. I think the thing is there's really not much negative space except between the legs, the beak too. So yeah, I think it's a cool piece too, though. I think there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think there's a lot of potential here.
That's like a general rule of thumb too, because this is obviously concept art. This isn't, you know, a finished piece. So when you're doing concept art, no part of it should be mysterious. The point of concept art is to explain without any question everything about this character for either an animator to look at or a writer to look at or, you know, a level designer to look at and say, I understand every part of this character. So if that is your intention with your character and you're not painting a whole sequence, you know, a whole scene where maybe it's supposed to be hidden, you can't really tell what's going on with it. Someone should be able to look at this and be able to understand everything that's going on with it.
It can be mysterious in theme, it can't be mysterious in execution.
Right, but again, I really like the idea, and I like a lot about this.
I like the purple shadow.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. Who's next?
I'll go.
You wanna go?
I'll go.
You ready?
I'll take a go. So the character that I picked is from Donovan. The character that I picked, her name is V, and one of the things that really drew me to her immediately is I like the style. I can appreciate a simple, cutesy, straightforward, cartoony style.
She reminds me of 90s anime a little bit. It's really cute.
Yeah, I can see that. The thing that drew me to her design the most was actually having like a context and like knowing her story. I think this character has so much potential to share her really interesting narrative. So her background is that she's a hero with storm-related powers, and she gets her powers from her bracelets. And she also is a very like excited person who trains younger heroes in her gym. With the design the way it is now, after learning about those concepts, I can see it, but I wouldn't get it necessarily from looking at it immediately. And I think that's what's so great about where you are now, because it's a really good place to start. The number one thing that I want to change about this character is her bracelets. Her bracelets are like so important to her character and her powers, but the way they look right now, it's actually very hard to tell that they're there. So her bracelets create weather effects, primarily lightning. And looking at the design, you can't really see that.
It's just the bracelets are probably the least important visual aspect here. Like, she has those tattoos, which are just stripes. You could definitely, there's a lot of potential for storm-themed tattoos that might be a little more interesting. And everywhere else in her design, there's more contrast than the bracelets. So the effect that accomplishes is the bracelets are overlooked, but they're really important.
Yeah, something I think that people don't talk about it nearly as much as they talk about character design is prop design. And props are an excellent opportunity to add narrative to your character. In a character like V here, where the bracelets are so central to her story and what she does, they need more emphasis. As far as the colors go, I like the blue and yellow. I think it's cute. I understand that it comes from like weather. You can see that, like lightning and rain.
Yeah.
The biggest issue with the colors are just, again, the bracelets, like Claire mentioned earlier. The value of her skin tone and the value of the bracelets are so similar that you can't really see the bracelets.
It almost looks like an extension of her skin.
One thing I would also do to make the character's story stand out more is give her more specific gym clothing. Right now, I think the clothing is very, like, yoga mom. You think about OKKO, all the different characters in that. The main character's mom, she runs a dojo, and her clothing, I feel, is a little more specific than a tank top and sweatpants.
She is someone who trains other superheroes, so if she has her gym, maybe you could also design a logo for the gym that has a lot of information and put that on. That would be really fun.
Yeah, that's so great. There's so much like opportunity here for narrative to come through. I love her expression. I think her personality shines through a lot with that.
Yeah.
While we're still on the topic of like the clothing, I just because the Pokemon trailer's just dropped and it's kind of fresh in my mind, but all of those gym leaders have these designs that are based off of like soccer players, and they kind of have jerseys that have all of their like sponsors and all these different icons and logos and stuff on them. I think that is a really cool look, and maybe look at like sponsored athletes and kind of see what they're wearing. You know, there's a lot of stripes and patterns and emblems and logos.
Yeah, that reminded me. A sport that has really big important props. Boxing, right? So maybe you could look into what boxers wear, give her that outfit, and maybe she can get like power gloves that way.
Oh, that's like gloves would be cool. I think.
Or even like fingerless
Thunder
gloves.
gauntlets.
Yeah, protects her hands against the electricity going through her bracelets.
Yeah,
yeah.
And like you know, a lot of like training equipment is padded and it looks almost rubbery. You know, that could go both ways. Rubber to insulate against the electricity.
Oh, I was just gonna say, mentioning rubber, I was wondering why there was so much contrast in her boots, but they're rubber rain boots.
Oh!
Which
is
I
that
think is
part of
really
it?
cute. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cute.
That's really clever. Keep that.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cute. Going forward, when you're drawing this character, definitely push the pose, because the pose she's in right now is very like defaults for when I've drawn my character, which I'm so guilty of. I think every character I ever draw. Oh my god. Yeah, it's a thing. Like, you have to draw that one so you can draw the cooler ones. Look up active poses for this active character. You know, you want to draw her like punching, lifting, weights, being a great coach.
Yeah, the thing I'm always going to say is reference, and it's hard with something like this because obviously you don't want it to look like a real human. That's not the style of this world. Like things like foreshortening and you know, kicks and stuff, that can be hard to do even if you're simplifying it. And even if you're simplifying it, if you don't have enough information, it's going to look weird. Draw a couple real humans now and again. Your characters don't have to look like that, but if you have that information stored away kind of in your mind, when you go in, it's going to be much easier to draw complicated poses, and that's going to give you more options to express more personality through your characters so they're not just hands on the hip default pose.
Look for distance of the reference compared to your drawing, and like sort of look for little points that you can incorporate into your more stylized piece.
Mimic the proportions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's about getting the core of the action is like the most important thing. I think like kind of what we're saying is that if you inform the pose based on something in real life, then it's going to make your simplified and stylized character seem even stronger. But obviously, this doesn't look like a real human. It's like the symbol of a human. Right. So like, it's kind of like getting that pose puts them in the context of our world. Like if they're doing something that we like understand, like if they are lifting a weight or if they are running, like that's something we can connect to.
Yeah. Yes.
I think a really good artist for you to look at would be Brian Lee O'Malley, because he has a style that's very similar, but he has a lot of very dynamic poses, and I think you could definitely copy some of that energy.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one more thing. I think that what you have to do is, for the bracelets, you have used almost entirely a black outline in your entire piece, and that's the one part where you decided to go lineless, especially without there being any shadow or highlight. There's really no way for the bracelets to pop. It really doesn't draw our eye because they're so thin, and try to make it a more specific bracelet. Like look at bracelet images, like
reference.
Reference. Make it a specific bracelet and base it off a bracelet maybe you have in real life or you saw someone you know wear.
Or actually like a brace, like a training brace
or
something. There's so many different options.
A gauntlet, or like, it has to be a little bit more specific. And then also think that maybe you could put a pop of color on the bracelet instead
of just yellow.
Instead of solid yellow, you could put the blue in there, you could put something else. Or you could put shinies on it, maybe that has some sort of glow, and then you could think about adding shadow and highlight to your character too, to make things stand out more.
Alright, we're ready to move on to the last one?
Yeah.
Alright, the one I chose was Mercury, by Mercury. Hi, Mercury.
Hi.
So the reason I chose Mercury, I don't know. I just have a little attraction to this. I think the colors are really bright and pop well. I like the concept of it incorporating like astrology because I always find that fun to talk about. Mercury said that Mercury is an alien/demon hybrid that lives in a modern-day Earth. The reason her skin has no pigment is because her blood is actually made of liquid mercury, which I think is actually a really cool idea. I've never, ever heard of that before. I think that works really well for either an alien or a demon, but I guess my first critique is that mixing both an alien and a demon, I don't know, I usually like to stick to one path and just explore that. For visual critiques, the outfit is a little plain. I understand that this character, they're 16, they probably go to high school, but I think that outfit could use a little more
personality.
Personality, because you said here the personality is outgoing, loud, selfish, and relaxed. I get relaxed from this outfit, I get relaxed from the pose, I don't get outgoing, loud, or selfish from the clothing or the pose. If you push either of those, I think the personality will shine through much more strongly.
Something real quick, something we noticed going through the designs, we had a couple of different character sheets, including this one, that all had this list of likes and dislikes, and I know that's kind of a convention on character sheets, but we noticed a lot of things in this list that could be conveyed through visual design but weren't. So if it's important to this character that they're outgoing, you should show that.
Right, or that she likes pranks, or likes sleeping, or is afraid of fire. Like, that's really cool. Like, I don't know how fire reacts with actual liquid mercury. Does that
might have
things
something to do
explode?
with it.
Because that would be really cool. If there's a reason behind that.
But and certain things it's not worth trying to put into one character design.
Right.
You'd be working on it for years and years and years if you're trying to figure out how to in one pose show that this character is afraid of fire.
Yeah, you don't have to show all of this through one pose, one drawing. Like, if this is a character that exists in a comic, like, maybe throughout the course of the comic, that will be revealed later. But I think Mercury, as far as pose and outfit, I like the hair, I like the horns with the moon and the star. Is that part of Mercury's logo for the astrological? Well, I see it's part of the name, and it looks like it has horns.
Yeah, that's
which I think is really cute that you
the
added onto the
horns.
character.
I would say you could even play that up in some way.
Yeah.
I feel
definitely
like
play up the monster, alien, or demon.
You do have, an alien demon can look like anything, so I'm not saying there's a certain way that it should look, but it also means that there are so many different possibilities, and it's worth experimenting. Try a couple different designs where you play up the star, the moon, the horns, and that way you kind of get all of these ideas out visually, and you can look at them and you say, this one's too crazy, this one is, not enough, this one's just right. And once you have all of those ideas, you'll be able to find you'll come to the best possible solution, because I think there is more that you can do with those horns and that little star and moon going up on the top there.
Since she's not human, also, I would say just experiment, try different studies where she looks more bestial, she looks more demonic, she looks more alien, and you don't have to keep those, but in that experimentation, you might find bits and pieces that you want to keep in her actual design.
Mm-hmm. Something also just in terms of like stylization is that it looks like you've really squared off the face and kept things really geometric, but then in pretty much the rest of the drawing, it's either based off of real life or just, it's just straight up round. Like, this hair is very bouncy and flowy. And I think the combination is almost working because the shoes are more geometric like the face, but just pushing it in one style, either more naturalistic or more stylized, would definitely improve this character's
just
visual
consistency.
appearance. Yeah, consistency overall.
Let's say relaxed is the key feature you're trying to highlight with this
Seems
one.
like it.
From what all we can see, that feels like the most what you're trying to go for. The half-shut eye, the hands in the pockets, all that stuff.
I love the
That is
sweatshirt,
nice. Yeah, that
the
is a nice
sweatshirt tie
detail.
that's like half stuck in the hood, because that's so real.
I think that the silhouette could be more interesting. It is very plain. It is kind of a triangle, which is an interesting shape to work with, but everything's very contained. I
Sort of the
understand.
same
I understand
look,
when
too.
you have your hands in your pockets. There isn't really a lot of interesting things to work with, but you could sort of try to work that in a way that has more interesting shapes to it. Maybe there's more negative space in between the arms. Maybe one arm's in the pocket and one arm's doing something else. Maybe there's another way to show relaxed. Pretty much the key of just what I'm trying to say is just try different poses and try different silhouettes. Maybe the hair is more voluminous in one. Maybe the hair is more asymmetrical. Maybe the pose is more asymmetrical. Yeah, but just think about how you can show relaxed in a more interesting way. Because the pose is kind of boring. It's sort of just like, oh, the hands in the pockets. We all do that.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. Yeah, maybe you didn't want to draw hands. I mean, I've done that too. My other thing is I think that the proportion could be exaggerated a little bit, because the thing is it's very close to being very accurate to a real human, but the whole middle area is kind of confusing me, where the sweatshirt is long, but also their pants are baggy, like where we're seeing like the top of their pants, and it sort of just gives this implication of a really long torso and really long legs. Maybe that is intentional, but it might just be something to be aware of. It looks just a little long in the middle.
I just think the tail could definitely use a little work. I really like how you're using like pure black for the horns and the tail to like maybe separate the flatness of it, like lends itself to being more either demon or alien, like is otherworldly. But I think the tail mostly could just use a little more work, just because it looks like a string with a star on the end of it. Maybe there's more going on with the stars, like there's multiple stars or floaty little bits, or I don't want to give too specific.
Yeah,
I think the tail could just
experimenting.
because tails are often used for running and like steering almost. And there's a reason.
Yeah. If you're gonna do weird anatomy, which you should, because you have a non-human character,
and it's your life,
you
and
can
drawing
push
is
it.
fun.
Yeah, have fun. We are saying that you have to base a lot of character design off of real life and reference and anatomy and blah blah blah. But like the most important thing is to have fun, and then go back and realize bits and pieces of your character more. I like your character's tail, but I think it could use a little work and either have a little more reason or just have more designy elements to it. I like that Mercury's hair is almost like a spacey gradient.
Yeah.
I think that's really cute and incorporates space.
Maybe you could have that gradient, that spacey gradient, somewhere else in the design too.
Yeah, that could go on the tail, could
be on the logo on the sweatshirt.
Yeah, I think, I'm gonna be honest, I think the bright red shoes, I think red Converse are really cute. But I think the red used here is just a little too, like, stop sign, like...
We look right at her shoes.
Yeah, that's the first thing we look at, and if that's what you want us to look at first, fine. But, I definitely think you could tone the red back a little bit.
Just keep at it. I think you're definitely heading in an interesting direction. It looks like this character was made with love. Try more things, experiment, and push it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to have fun.
And we're not saying don't include character bios like this, because oftentimes, like, this is really
It's
good.
fun.
One, it's fun. Two, it allows, if someone else is drawing a character with this character, like, interacting together, like, they can play off these little details, but try to keep in mind, if you want to show something, you can show it visually. You don't have to explain it through writing your text. I think Mercury's great.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for helping us get to the point we're at. Thank you for 3,500 subscribers. Thank you for a year of watching our content, reacting to our content, and participating in our community. It means so much to us. We only exist because of our fans. So thank you. Thank you for all the submissions. We were really overwhelmed by the response, and we really think it's great that we could get this kind of reaction, and we can help you guys continue to develop and innovate with your character design. That's really amazing, so thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video, share it with a friend, and let us know in the comments if you'd like to see another video like this.
It already helped me, just even by talking through these character design traits and stuff. It like gets me thinking.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.